One. Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Uh,
Hey,
Mike,
Reed,
how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. If I'm talking comics, I'm doing good.
Oh, always good to talk comics. We've been on a bit of a roll, just having some rehashing conversations you and I have had for probably years on this, and it's interesting because I know we were talking with your kid about it the other week too, about his thoughts on it, and it's the concept of Batman's no kill rule. I know this gets discussed by a lot of folks. I think what we'll
Right.
talk about is, do we think that's still a good applicable policy for Batman in the modern landscape of things? And I think we can probably turn it into a bit of a larger conversations about superheroes overall and killing and stuff like that. So I'm a huge Batman fan, so I'll go second. I want to go to you first on this. Batman's no kill rule. Should it be there? What do you think?
Yes, I think it should be there. Although my son almost convinced me a few years ago that it should not, because we go back and forth about this Batman no kill rule all the time. And he's quick to point out, well, in the video games or in this movie or that movie, those people obviously would have been killed when the Batmobile ran over them or something. So that Batman definitely kills. And
Yeah,
what's going on here? You can't let the Joker keep getting out. It's ridiculous. The body count just keeps going up. You got to
yeah,
put it into it. What was it? Robin or Red Hood had the right idea uh, that was going to
yeah,
go out and take him out. And I always go back to no, Batman shouldn't kill. The reason he's Batman is because people he loved got killed, and you just can't go around killing people. Although you could work on the security at Arkham Asylum a little bit, that could help things quite a bit because everybody seems to get out of that place. I don't know
yeah.
why everyone's so afraid to go there because it seems to be have a open door somewhere.
No,
But
it's always funny how much Bruce Wayne takes the criticisms for writers having to use the same villains over and over. Someone's like, well, if Bruce Wayne used his money to make Gotham better, well, like Gotham can't become better, otherwise there's no need for Batman. And he can't improve the security at Arkham Asylum because if he did, none of the villains we want to see would
right.
escape.
So it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg thing, right? Like you gotta have it's got to be there for the story. So, but no, you can't have. And by that same token, you can't have Batman kill because a obviously he'd be no better than the bad guys, but b it just makes the story so much more interesting. He's bound by his morals and his values to not go there, and honestly, I think it's just truly, as much as we can glean from a fictional character's personality trait or whatever,
Yeah.
um, he can't go there, and you got to admire and respect that, especially some of the evil that he confronts.
Yeah. No, I think the thing is, I really don't care about the no kill rule for any other superhero except Batman. I think he's the only one that it truly 100% matters. I don't think other superheroes should really kill. But for Batman, as I always read it, he was as a kid, and I know in his early foundational appearances, if you go back to Detective 27 and things like that, I think to the one where he's fighting the Mad Monk in one of those early appearances, he's like literally shooting vampires while they're sleeping in the grave and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
he did use a gun, he did have that stuff. But I think if we look at the modern version of Batman that most of us know and love, although I'm sure Bob Kane would claim he created that too. The
right.
the thing about Batman is I've always loved the idea of I'm going to make sure what happened to me didn't happen to anybody else. That has always been the foundational piece of Batman to me that I've always loved is it's a guy going, I know the effect of murder. I know how much the killing people and the violence that does, what that creates. And to me, it would be really stupid if Batman kills, in all honesty. It would be almost that he's creating versions of himself no matter
Yeah,
what he does. It just doesn't make sense. And I do think there's also kind of an interesting complexity to Batman as a character in that he's fine breaking bones and making people eat through a straw. It just won't kill you. And I
yeah,
think that's an interesting moral thing that kind of shows something about Batman. And that I'm not a huge fan of when they examine it a ton, but Batman is largely creation of an 8-year-old kid whose parents got killed. and he creates this figure in his mind of who he wished had swooped out of the shadows to save his parents. And so I've always kind of liked that Batman has a rather simplistic morality of like, no, I'll do everything up to killing. I'll snap your neck, I'll snap your wrist, I'll break your arm, you'll eat through a straw, but I will not end your life because I believe you deserve a chance to live, and the people you love shouldn't see you die. And I think there's something to that. I think the no kill thing for Batman, it's come under fire from some folks to like, well, what all the Joker's done and all that stuff. Again, I think that's what makes that dynamic work is that Batman as a character, there's no doubt in physical confrontation that Batman's going to beat Joker. There's no doubt in a physical confrontation he's going to beat the Riddler or the Penguin or Two-Face or anyone like that. But if Batman snaps and kills them, it's like you said, he doesn't become much better than them because he's already skirting so far outside of the established law as it is. Really, that no kill thing is the last line that makes him a hero. And if he breaks that, I think it ruins his character more than any other character in comics if you have him kill. And to me, I mean, I knew the DCU was in trouble the first time I saw Batman versus Superman. He was mowing people down in the car, and I'm like, oh man, we're in trouble because this is you have already. It kind of showed me immediately where DC was on their movies, where it's like, oh man, you're gonna go for edgy, like you don't even understand an essential element with Batman. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, like Jax is not wrong. Like Keaton's Batman kills, and a lot of the Batmans are willing to kill. I just always think it's a significantly more interesting story when he has this limitation of I can beat you, but I have to do it in a way where you're trying to kill me and I can't kill
Yeah,
you.
that's a really great story point for a writer to go off of because he's already as at a disadvantage because he doesn't have superpowers, but not only that, you have this lethal, deadly force being thrown against you. You have to defeat it without killing it. That's always a great setup for a good story and great confrontation. And you're right, it's true. Batman it originally was, a killer, and he was based off a very violent and dark character from the pulps, the Shadow,
Yep.
who was also not above lethal force in those tales, and they just kind of morphed it into comic book form. And so a lot of his early tales, he was more violent. But yeah, you can't, as a writer, and I don't know which one of the writers made that turn, if it was Jerry Robinson, who was doing a lot of ghost writing, or Bill Finger, um, who made that turn. It was probably Bill Finger. But it just makes for more dramatic,
It's
right?
a much more compelling story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that all this lethal force is being thrown at you, but you have to figure out a way to do it without superpowers and not killing the villain. It's more of a struggle. It makes for a better story.
Well, I think the thing too is because Batman has so many psychologically complex villains. I think the thing is he always, as much as he gets treated like he's this dark, depressed guy in a cave who just wants to punch things, Batman also is someone who truly believes in redemption for folks. And I think what they've done with villains like Poison Ivy at times, although I think they've largely ruined her in the last couple of years. But
Catwoman at times.
Catwoman, right? Harvey Dent used to be his friend. He knows there's a good guy in there. He's not going to kill Two Face, and I think
He
it's under the
tries.
Red
They always
Hood.
end up disappointing him, though.
Yeah, they always let him down, but I think it was with the movie Under the Red Hood where him and Jason are having that debate. And Jason's like, why didn't you kill the Joker? And he's like, no, it would have been too easy to kill the Joker. I wanted to. I have to fight against doing that because that's the line for me. I know if I can't do that, there's no coming back. And I think that's just a great character thing where Batman as a character is psychologically strong as he is and as much as he can take. He knows there is this barrier that if I cross, there is no coming back from that. And I just think that's a fascinating character examination of him. And it really differentiates him from the other kind of darker anti-heroes because that's where I always loved Batman is, I've always liked the more darker characters in these universes like Batman, Punisher, Moon Knight, Wolverine, those kind of characters. Those characters all kill. And where Batman's difference is he almost aligns more with the Superman line of thinking in terms of he's dark and yes, he's brooding, but he absolutely 100% believes in no, there is good and there is evil, and you do not kill, and that makes you evil. And I've always liked that element of it. I think larger, so I think we're both on the side Batman shouldn't. Larger, what do you think about superheroes killing in comic books, Perry? Like for any superhero, are you okay with it with some characters? Do you think it fits for others? Like overall concept wise, what do you think?
I think for some characters it does, and you'll have to correct me on Daredevil. I
Daredevil does not. Yeah,
I
he's
don't think Daredevil does. We know Wolverine does. I'm trying to think of others that do.
clearly a
It
Punisher does. Wonder
Punisher, of
Woman has in
course.
the past.
I think
Um,
it works for some characters, but it's a strange little fictional world, this medium of comic books and human beings with superpowers. It's a strange little fictional world, and it's a great fodder for debate on, the human sensibility and humanity. Like, if you had the power, would you? And what would the repercussions be if you did? And I
yeah,
think a lot of writers found fertile ground for that and have been able to tell tales like with Wolverine, how painful and brutal that is, when they do, and the consequences that, you know, Logan always has to go back to Xavier, and Xavier, kind of, tries to rehabilitate him or admonish this or that. But ultimately, that's part of his character. He'll do what he has to do to get it done.
mhm.
And you may not like it, but that's in his personality. I think it's harder for you to force that on a character who has been designed otherwise.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting, Daredevil's probably the only other character where if they had him kill someone, and I think they did in a run where he accidentally killed someone he wasn't intending to, but in the course of a fight, it led to someone dying. Um, Daredevil's the only other one. If they would start killing, it would bug me. The rest of them, I think, like Superman killing doesn't bug me because with Superman, what you trust is the morality of Superman is such that he is only going to do that if it's absolutely the only answer possible. Like I think that's the thing is I'm not like it's funny. Man of Steel triggered a lot of this for folks where Superman kills Zod at the end of that movie, and I will largely say I didn't love a Superman movie that ends with the brutal neck snap
Of
of
Zod.
the film. What I
Yeah.
will say for Superman, though, when they have Superman kill, because Superman's such a morally upstanding guy in most of his things, it is more of a there is no other possible answer. I look at like Man of Steel. It's always bugged me when people critique Man of Steel with him dying. Well, I hate the violent way of it, and I want to critique it because I just don't like how Zack Snyder sees superheroes. What I'll say is, in that movie, what other option does he have? He can't clunk Zod on the head and put him in a prison cell. Like, there's
Right.
nothing on the planet that would hold that guy. Zod
Yeah.
has made it very clear he's going to, with the rest of every fiber of his being, kill as many people as he can, basically try to raise that entire society and destroy it. And it's like, okay, at a certain point, like what's the other answer? It's the same thing of like when Superman fights Doomsday and Doomsday dies. Technically, Superman killed Doomsday, but like really, what was the other option that he had? Like,
Yeah.
and I think those don't bug me when it's Batman or Superman and Wonder Woman. Batman's the only one that I really feel like if he kills, it's so far out of character he can't fit unless it's a character like you said. I think Daredevil, where he shouldn't be a killer, and I would say the same for Nightcrawler, or when those two would be involved, bugs me because of the way the religion has been woven into those characters and is such an intricate part of who they are and their idea of the value of life and as being a God-given gift and things like that. I think there should always be where those two are very, very, very reluctant to ever kill anybody. But I would also say probably on principle, Spider-Man probably shouldn't, just because Spider-Man means so much to so many little kids that I think it would
Yeah.
be really difficult to have a Spider-Man comic book where he kills somebody.
He
But
snaps. Spidey
yeah,
snaps.
Spider-Man snapping someone's neck, like that's maybe not
It
with the
doesn't
the
taste right.
all-time childhood mascot of
It
superheroes.
doesn't wash down right. Yeah.
I think as long as what's interesting is I do think why they should keep it not killing, and a lot of it is what I think has been lost in comic books, and I think this has really hurt Marvel to me more than any other company. Marvel used to have where you had your Wolverine, your Moon Knight, and your Punisher who killed, and it made them a certain type of character in that universe. Where the standard Marvel superhero is like, I'll work with you, but you also had with like Daredevil and the Punisher don't like each other. They're going to fight
Right.
just as often as they'd work together simply because of that line, right? Your Captain America was not really going to team up with those kind of guys. And I think what's interesting is because they've had in the past, decade where Iron Man's killed people, Thor's killed people. I mean, the X-Men were wiping people out by the dozen in these latest kind of comics. And I get it, you can paint scenarios where it's not inherently wrong to, if in self-defense of saving other people and you have to take someone's life. I think you can write stories where that happens. But what Marvel really did is, outside of Daredevil in the last couple years, and Spider-Man too, but like in the last 20 years or so, everyone in that universe is kind of just comfortable with like killing their villains.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's really weird because also then they'll have these recurring villains. And it's like, okay, if you're cool with killing the bad guy, like I think that's the big thing with like Wolverine, somewhat where I think the killing thing of superheroes kill doesn't even make sense. Like at some point, Wolverine's killing Magneto. Like at some point, that's unless after Magneto ripped the adamantium out of him, and I guess it'd be hard. But like at a certain point, he's
yeah,
gonna look at that guy and go, "No, I'm not gonna let you live anymore. I'm not gonna let this, this type of character, like the Red Skull. I'm sorry, Wolverine in a world where the Red Skull exists and he's willing to kill."
yeah.
That he's not letting that guy breathe anymore if he's as comfortable with killing. And so I think that's where the
Sorry,
killing
Charles
rule
Xavier,
does.
but it's for your best. It's for the
Yeah,
best in the end, right?
yeah, I think
But
that's
then
the
you'd be
one issue with
yeah,
the kill rule is if you're going to have superheroes kill, then you can't have the recurring villains that
yeah,
are around every time. And it's just so interesting to me the difference in Marvel and DC with it because like the MCU, almost all the MCU movies ended with them killing their villain outside of Spider-Man. Right, like the MCU heroes had no compunction, like Iron Man letting Ironmonger die, and all like there was no like, oh my gosh, he killed the bad guy at the end kind of thing.
yeah,
Whereas like Superman snapped someone's neck in Man of Steel, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? This is awful. It's
yeah.
just so interesting that kind of impact. Like Marvel, largely a lot of their heroes kill, and it's not really a big deal. DC, for some reason, Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman does it. People are like, "Oh my gosh, that's not the character. This is an abomination." It's very interesting to see that debate.
Well, I think also that if they ran around killing all the bad guys, then you wouldn't have any more stories to write. So I think there's a very practical reason why,
Why they can't?
right? But also it does fit the characters that they have some moral fortitude, and they're not going to kill. Um, has everything gone too dark? Yes. Should superheroes kill? Personally, I don't think most of them should.
I would say they
I'd like
should.
to
Yeah,
be. I'd like it to be a little more, a little more altruistic on it. But I think I don't know. I think comic books are going to do what they're going to do, but yeah, I don't. I think it hurts the story more than it helps it, unless there's no other alternative. The other thing is, and I remember, talking with my son over the years about this, is you get wrapped up in you try and put the fictional characters into real life scenarios. Like if
hmm
there really was a Batman, but there's not. It's just
no, I think
it's just
that's
fantasy. It's like, it's just fantasy, and so, the writer's going to write the story the way they write it, but I do feel that it helps the story more than it hurts it if the villain has a shot at redemption overall in the arc of storytelling. But yes, even the greatest writers, like Shakespeare, murder happened all the time, and it's a good plot point. When the protagonist takes out the antagonist, however that goes down.
mhm.
But in this particular world of fantasy, I think for the most part, although I do enjoy a good dark story, for the most part, I feel it should be
It
treated.
should be really a last resort only
Yeah,
option kind of. And I think what I will also say, I love the point you bring up if this thing's gotten too dark. I do think if you start having your heroes kill, it takes these characters so far away from what they're supposed to be. In that, I'll always say this: I love comic books. I love reading them. I love the medium. I do have a tinge of guilt every time I read comic books that are written for adults because I think we've taken this so far away from the kids' medium that it was supposed to be. And I think there has been an element of selfishness that's kind of run wild for I want the stories to grow with the older audience as opposed to, I mean, in all honesty, I think if I handed the average, X-Men comic book or Spider-Man comic book or Batman comic book to a 4 or 5 year old, there's going to be some censoring that you have to do with that comic book in terms of the content that's there. And it's interesting because Stan always had that magic sauce in the 60s and stuff of exploring a comic book that an older reader could enjoy and appreciate, and without it being something that if you handed it to a 5 year old, you'd be like, whoa, 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 I don't want you looking at that. And I think we've got to get a little bit of that balance back. It's probably a topic we can dive into a little bit more in another video, but I'm always amazed that every month they release these Marvel Masterworks, these mighty Marvel Masterworks comics that capture some of the old 60s runs of these characters. I'm always amazed at how good the stories are. The dialogue may be a little bit clunky, but the actual moral conundrums and things that these heroes are in, and yet all of it, it's like I could hand that to my 2 year old and he could flip through each one of those and I wouldn't have a single problem with the panels that he sees in there. But if he went into my modern box of Batman comic books, I'd be like, no, 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 you're not. Not that there's anything inherently awful in those or anything, but I do think we've dragged the medium into a PG-13, closer to R. It's funny because like I think early comics probably closer to a PG movie. We
Yeah.
kind of were at PG-13 for a while, and I think comics you kind of see them more going towards the R-rated scale of things. And I think that's I just don't know that I know we're writing for the older audience. I know that's the majority of comic book fans are guys between, 30 and 50 pretty much that are picking it up. I just there is a part of me that looks and goes, I think we need to temper it down a bit and remember that these are children's superheroes. It's great if adults can enjoy it still. That's fantastic. And every once in a while, yeah, we should get a Watchmen or something like that that's aimed at that older audience. But I think your default setting of your universe shouldn't be where there's a lot of curse words and blood and stuff like that in an average Marvel and DC comic. I think you want that for Image and Indies, awesome. I do want to say I do hope Marvel and DC can kind of tamper
Well,
that down a bit.
ultimately that's where the next generation of customers is going to come from. And like we always like to say, these iconic logos are put on sippy cups and diapers.
Yep.
And you want to be able to sell them the medium from which those logos and icons first sprang. You want to be able to put that in front of the kids. But yeah, there was a secret sauce there, and a lot of the movies got it perfectly right as well. And it's there if you want to explore it. I think right now they're trying to chase and juice every dollar they can out of us older fans and keep us interested. But I would challenge, I really would. I would challenge them to go back to some of those older stories and write, new ones in that vein. They, are not disinteresting for adults, but not like
Well, no,
too
you
much
you look at
violence.
the Batman the Animated Series was another one that threaded that needle of it was a children's cartoon. It could be there, but if you watch it as an adult, that's not like a kiddie cartoon with stupid moral. There's a lot of emotional depth to a lot of those things.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing is what I get tired, and this I think even to relate it all back to the no kill rule, I get tired of this idea that to make things for adults, it has to be dark, edgy, and moody and feature sex, cussing, and blood and stuff like that. It's like,
I think that's a
no, that's
misconception.
that's a
I
misconception. And I think the other thing is some of that's just maybe you're not a good enough writer to thread the needle where it's appropriate for the audiences.
I think
Maybe that's your personal preference, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. Because we had guys like Stan and Jack and Paul Dini with the animated series of Batman and I mean how many other John Brome, all these other amazing guys that were there who were able to tell those stories in the past. Um, I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. I'd be interested to see what people think, but I 100% agree. Me and you have talked about that for years of this medium is built on these are children's heroes. These are, little figures that kids buy and things like that. And comics aren't I can tell as a comic book buying dad, I would not give comic books to my 5 or 6 year olds that are modern. When I go buy comics for my when my 15-year-old was younger and when my 2 year old, I go buy them older ones. I give them 60s, 70s Spider-Man. I give them, 60s, 70s Batman. I have no problem throwing Brave and the Bold 28 in front of my little 2 year old and letting him flip through it and just see the colorful images and stuff like that and have
yeah.
fun with it. When my other kid was, 8 or 9 or 10, I had no problem tossing him all of Stan Lee's Spider-Man work. Now And it's weird. I've even got the poster behind me of Deadpool and Wolverine. There was a part of me when I watched that movie, I really enjoyed it, but there was a part of me that was also kind of like, man, these are Marvel comic book superheroes, and I understand it's appropriate for Deadpool and Wolverine somewhat. At the same time, when you have a very, very, very R-rated film,
Yeah.
it's like, man, I don't know that two of Marvel's most iconic superheroes should be in movies that like a little. And again, it's not like we don't aim Wolverine and Deadpool at superheroes. They're in the action figure aisle. They're in the Marvel universe just like
You're right.
everybody else.
Yeah.
That you have a movie that's so inappropriate for a 5 or 6 or 7 year old kid, where it's like, yeah, we're not even close. Like, like I see my toddler really likes Wolverine because I have so much Wolverine stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know you're a good 10, 12 years away before I sit you down in front of the first movie where Wolverine got his costume. Um, and I think
Yeah.
even on the Batman end, as much as like the Dark Knight trilogy and the Batman are great films. Could you show those to a 7-year-old? Probably not. And yeah, I think that's the MCU, like you point out all the time. The MCU hit the perfect spot of an adult could watch it and have fun. You could show it to your 7 or 8 year old, and they were probably going to have a lot of fun with it. There was maybe a few jokes that would fly over their head that they wouldn't get. Um, I don't know. It's just I'd be interested to see what people think below. Do you think the medium overall? Do you think superheroes should kill? Do you think the medium needs to be aimed a little bit more at kids, kind of tamper it down? Because it seems like we're headed towards that R-rated sort of stuff. Should we be tampering it down and getting back? I'd be interested to know what people think below.
Yeah, I think I would be very curious to read the comics. I think the overall thing is that we've gone too dark, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be dark episodes, but I think the overall, like I said, we're not getting any younger. The next generation is there. They're wearing the diapers. They're drinking out of the sippy cups.
Yeah,
give them,
yeah, it's
give them a
there's
good
something to
monthly.
the fact that my son,
Yeah.
my toddler loves the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon, and it's like, in all honesty, there's no comic book unless I reach back to the '60s. There's really no comic book for me to put in front of you when you turn 4 or 5. And I know
Yeah.
there were a couple offshoot ones they did, like Spider-Man Adventures and things like that. There were a couple issues, but if I go hand the standard, if I take my son to the comic book shop when he's 4 or 5, and he walks by the wall of comic books, there's going to be maybe one option a month for him to pick up at most, and it's like I don't know if that should be the case. Like
And
that's
I think you got to sell it to the bean counters up above, is to, yes, your number one customer is, an older guy like me. But guess what? We have kids and we want them to read comics too.
mhm.
Always make sure, because we're going into the shop anyway.
Yep.
We're going into the shop anyway. Always make sure there's something there for my youngster to read so that he can or she can learn to love comics like we do. And there should always be something on the shelf for them that they enjoy. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me
Yeah,
know.
let us know what you guys think below. I know one argument people make too is, well, they see worse stuff online every day and stuff like that. I'll be honest, as a parent, though, I'm going to say this: I don't really care if I'm buying it for my kid. If I'm
Yeah.
going to actually make a purchase, it should be something appropriate for him. And I think DC and Marvel have not recognized that as much. I get that there's a lot of stuff online and kids see worse things. I just think in a medium of comic book superheroes, we could use a little bit more light. And certainly, I think the idea of superheroes killing needs some examination in terms of what does it say about them morally. I think especially for Batman, that line should never be crossed. But I'd be really interested to see what you guys think about everything we've touched on here. Let us know, as always, folks, what you think. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. You have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.